I think the finance director, I believe it was, of Whirlpool, quit his job, went in there, and then dismantled the company. And so you look at how much money they walked away with. I was so concerned about Maytag in Newton, Iowa, even though I don't represent them. I was trying to find a way to explain to the American people who did this to us. So I went to Newton, Iowa, and we filmed, just like you're doing, many of the workers who had been idled at the best manufacturing plant in America for washers and dryers that never failed. All right. Thousands of people were thrown out of work. And the thing about it was in a town, Newton, which was small enough where you could really see what happened to the people there. They've never recovered from that.
I've been there.
And that company was built from the bottom up by generations. In fact, Mr. Maytag is buried, Fred Maytag is buried looking at his plant. And it was the town. You know, but I thought it was symbolic of what happened to our country, which is why I went there. I thought every family had a Maytag, or they knew about Maytag, just like they know about GM, they know about Chrysler. And what happened to the auto companies is the auto companies became owned by the finance companies on Wall Street. So Cerberus owns both GM and Chrysler. They did not care about manufacturing. They cared about bleeding any equity out of those companies that they could. And during the 90s, it flowered where they became finance companies rather than manufacturing companies. They had all these lease-back deals. They had fleet sales through tax credits, and they manipulated the hard-fought equity accumulation that people had worked on for 2 generations.
Correct.
And they achieved their goal.
They did.
And they wrestled those companies to the ground. They bled them for everything. And when they got as much out of them as they could, spit out the workers, spit out the companies, they looked around and they found the last sector left that you could bleed. Well, there's only 2 left, housing and small business. Right. They bled housing, and now they're after small business. This, you know, so you look at Maytag, you look at the auto industry, you know, you look at the textile industry. They dismantled manufacturing, and they take it to very undemocratic places.
Yes.
And then they bring the product back here, and they say it's cheaper than it was before. Where is a car cheaper? When you were in South Carolina or North Carolina, and you wanted to expand, you have to go to a bank. And the bank would say, well, we want you to manufacture some of your stuff over there, or you don't get the loan. So it's the very same companies. We live in an era of monopoly finance right now where 5 banks control 40% of the deposits in the country. They're the very same ones that outsourced our jobs, and now they're taking our homes.
Yes, they are.
And while everybody else is on unemployment lines and food lines, they made $143 billion in bonuses. So it's the same characters. The trail leads right back to Wall Street and down to Charlotte. So it's nothing new, and they are making huge money off of the pain of the people. They've forgotten how you move a great country forward, and that involves mobilization. There was never anything great that happened in this country when people didn't mobilize to make it happen. When the first credit union was established in Filene's basement in the city of Boston, people said, hey, wait a minute, we don't want to be charged these high interest rates. We're going to create our own financial institutions. And credit unions were created as a tool to fight back against control by very large banks. When labor unions organized in partnership with churches during the early part of the 20th century, America got Social Security. She got a 40-hour work week. She got time and a half overtime. She got no child labor. It was unbelievable what happened when people mobilized. Frankly, when people mobilized, we became a republic. We threw off England, a colonial power, and now I see America in so many places in the world becoming a colonial power in places that don't even want us. I'm thinking in partnership with Great Britain. I thought, wait a minute, don't we remember our own history here? We wanted to be independent. So the young people, they've got all the instruments, but they've got to remember their political power. They've got to reassume their political power. They've got to mobilize. And frankly, if I were the young people, one of the first things I'd do is I'd go to Congress and I'd say, take the $143 billion back from Wall Street. They don't deserve it.
You know,
I guess I would say to the young people of our generation, go back and read about the American Revolution. Go back and think about the people who said, we want to break the bonds that hold us down. We don't want to be dominated anymore by a colonial power that asks us to produce and then takes all of our wealth, right? And we want to be our own country. And we want to assume that power unto ourselves. And they formed a Declaration of Independence. And I would say to the young people of this country, you got the internet, you got so many more tools than our forefathers and mothers had. We need a Declaration of Independence for the modern era so that we can recapture our country and take it back and give it to the people who worked so hard to preserve our liberties and to carry them to the next generation. Unfortunately, what happened is that the corporate sector and including the banking sector of this country got too self-serving post-World War II. And when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1989, rather than using that peace dividend to strengthen the American people and strengthen our country, they captured more of it to themselves. And so, for example, right now, the young people of our country, I say to myself, why aren't they organizing marches on Wall Street?
There you go.
On Wall Street, they just took $143 billion in bonuses when our young people are being turned into debtors. The average student, $20,000 in debt, $50,000, $100,000. I just met 2 divinity students with $100,000 in
Yeah.
debt.
Yeah.
You are not free. They have the bondsmen have their hooks into you, and you have to say, hey, wait a minute. You have to think back to the founding principles and the founding energy of our country. And there needs to be a compact among our young people, the best and the brightest. Liberty isn't an automatic. It has to be won anew by every generation. And you simply can't take this. You cannot be a tool of Wall Street, which they are making you. They are making you a sharecropper. They are making you a debtor. That is unfair to the future. Our liberties will not be preserved if the younger generation doesn't stand up and say, no. I think a documentary is necessary because the American people have to fight back.
Yes, we do.
And a film is one way of doing that. And I can't tell you how many Americans have said to me, Marcy, we're giving up. We're going to move to Canada, we're going to move to France, we're going to move to Mexico. I said, America has given us the best years of our lives.
True.
Well, they won't
She
vote.
gave us sweet liberty. Or they won't talk, or they've withdrawn into their homes.
Or they won't vote. They say that voting doesn't make a difference.
That's right.
My dad, he's voted forever, his whole life, and he's saying it doesn't make a difference now.
It doesn't make a difference unless people fight back. And that's what the revolution was all about.
Yes, it
We
was.
are a revolutionary people. And if the American people take back their country, and what they have to do is they have to wrestle down the forces that are strangling us. And those forces are very easy to find. They're the banks on Wall Street and in Charlotte, and all the subsidiaries that attach themselves to them that have done this to us.
Yes.
And they don't want to be in the spotlight. Those forces control our media, the messages that are fed over the media, and they want the people to be hopeless.
Yes.
They want the people, because if you're hopeless, you don't do anything, right?
Exactly.
And I say to the American
Exactly.
people, you got to have a revolutionary spirit.
We do.
And you've got to love liberty as much as Daniel Webster loved liberty, as much as Thomas Paine loved liberty, as much as George Washington loved liberty. And you have to love sweet liberty, and you have to understand what it means, and that we have to bind together. And they want people to feel alone. They want them to feel hopeless, because then they control them.